Trail. As the Senate advances a plan to reopen the government, deep Democratic divisions spill out into the open. What changed after 40 days of a united front? We're live on Capitol Hill, where Speaker Johnson is calling members back to work for the first time in nearly 2 months. Plus, going nowhere fast. The escalating nightmare for thousands of would-be travelers. Some airports seeing as many as half their flights delayed or canceled over the weekend. The warning the president just posted to air traffic controllers who have been calling out. And conspiracy rewarded. Big names involved in trying to overturn the 2020 election just got the news that they're getting a Trump pardon, even though they never actually faced any federal charges. Is this really about Trump continuing to push his disproved belief that the election was stolen? An awful lot to get to on this Monday, but we start with the Senate in session right now after taking a late-night step to end the 41-day-long shutdown, but creating a chasm in the Democratic Party. 7 Senate Democrats and 1 independent voted with Republicans, or, in the words of many of their colleagues, caved. That yes vote advancing a bill to restore federal funding without securing any of the concessions they've been demanding, and it's left the base seething. Social media is on fire today, with Democrats and their supporters calling it everything from a surrender to a betrayal. Some, like California's Ro Khanna, saying it should cost Minority Leader Chuck Schumer his job. But the 8 who broke with the Democrats insist they had no other choice.
Standing up to Donald Trump didn't work. The chances of negotiating a settlement in the midst of the shutdown were 0.
How do you talk with your colleagues, and do you understand their point of view that say, we did have a big win on Tuesday, we held out for 40 days, what did we get here?
I completely understand their point, and I would go back to them. Do you think the R's are going to give on the ACA a week from now? Do you think it'll in 2 weeks? Do you think they'll give? Do you think they'll give in a month? There was no credible argument that, yeah, we think they're going to give.
And while politically speaking, it's a controversial move for those Democrats, practically speaking, it's a deal that millions have been waiting for to end the shutdown, get thousands of federal workers back on the job, and restore SNAP benefits. I want to bring in MSNBC senior Hill correspondent Ali Vitale. Jake Sherman is co-founder of Punchbowl News and an MSNBC political contributor. With me here in studio, Julie Roginski, Democratic strategist and author of the Salty Politics newsletter on Substack. So, Ali, bring us up to speed. Where are we? What happens now?
We're waiting to see just how quickly the Senate is ultimately going to be able to move on this, Chris, knowing full well that they'll have the votes that they need to do so when they decide to do it. This is where a little bit of Senate magic can sometimes come into play if all 100 members decide to speed up the process. So far, no sense that that is what's going to happen, but at the same time, that is what people are driving toward. I think the general mood up here in the Senate broadly is a little bit of relief that they are finally moving out of the shutdown. At least that's what Senate Majority Leader John Thune echoed as he took the Senate floor just a little while ago. Watch.
I'm grateful that the end is in sight. But I would encourage every member of this body, Democrat or Republican, pro-bill or anti-bill, not to stand in the way of our being able to deliver the coming relief quickly. The American people have suffered for long enough. Let's not pointlessly drag this bill out. Let's get it done, get it over to the House, so that we can get this government open.
So that's exactly what the leader is talking about there, Chris, the idea that any one member could kind of gum this process up, but he's asking that they not do so that the House can get their work in order and the government can actually reopen. For their part, the House Speaker was just on a call with his members saying that he predicts a vote to happen on Wednesday. That feels a little bit fast, but then again, we're at the point where this could keep going slowly until it goes really quickly. So it's probably for the best that House members start making their way back to town, and that's exactly what the Speaker told at least his party, but also announced publicly earlier this morning to members of both parties, start getting back to Washington.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who haven't gotten paid who are wondering why people who have gotten paid think Wednesday might be fast, but we can have that discussion another time. Jake, what, if anything, did Democrats get out of a 40-plus days of a shutdown?
Nothing. They didn't get anything. This was the same deal that Senator John Thune, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, offered Democrats weeks ago. We're 41 days into the shutdown. And yes, I agree that they got nothing out of this deal. Now they say they got a year of SNAP benefits. That's not really true, because once the agriculture spending bill passes, they get SNAP benefits. They did halt the reduction in force notices, the mass layoffs the Trump administration conducted during the shutdown, but that wouldn't have happened if the government wasn't shut down, or at least not in the same form. They got nothing on ACA subsidies. They got a vote in the Senate. There's no vote scheduled in the House. There'll be some efforts to get a vote in the House, but Mike Johnson has been abundantly clear that that's not something he's interested in doing. So I do agree with Allie that Wednesday does feel a bit quick for a package of this magnitude. But the Speaker said he wants everybody to be back within 36 hours after a Senate vote. And again, it's tough to see Democrats just falling in line, but that jet fumes dynamic after being in session for so long is going to be very strong.
So why is it, Julie? Just now, Democrats are saying, well, I guess the president and Republicans are not going to negotiate. What is it in Donald Trump's history that made them think he was going to feel terrible for people who were hurting?
Let me just say this. We had the largest protests in the history of this country just a month ago. We had the best election cycle that Democrats have had in well over a decade, probably in close to 2 decades, just on Tuesday. We had poll after poll showing that Republicans are being blamed for this shutdown. And yet these Democrats just capitulated and got nothing for it. I can't explain it other than to say that I think they were terrified that Donald Trump really was going to push Republicans to get rid of the filibuster. So instead of actually making Republicans get rid of the filibuster, they decided to just do it themselves. They decided to just cave themselves rather than waiting for Republicans to do it for them. It is unconscionable. And the disconnect between how real Democrats are feeling today and how these people on the Hill think Democrats are feeling is night and day. I'm also going to just say this. I think all of this was a stalking horse. All of these members who voted for this were stalking horses for others. None of them is up next year, which is why you saw the people who were voted this way. If Chuck Schumer can't get his caucus to do the right thing and either not go down this path 5 weeks ago and inflict all of this pain for nothing, or keep Democrats in a place where they force Republicans to own this, as they have been doing for the last 5 weeks, I don't know what he's doing as leader. I don't understand what these people in Washington think they're doing representing the people who they claim to represent. I'm a New York Democrat. This man does not represent me. So,
Jake, was the strategy flawed from the start? And is Chuck Schumer in trouble?
I don't know that he's in trouble. I think it's too early to tell. Remember that it's very difficult to push out a Senate leader. It just is. There's no motion to vacate like there is in the House of Representatives. But what we could say about shutdowns after having covered them for a long time is that they rarely yield any results that you are seeking for the instigating party. Democrats shut down the government because they believed Donald Trump would fold and would cut a deal on health care, and Mike Johnson and John Thune would do the same thing. That did not happen. After 41 days, it did not happen, and there was no sign that it was going to happen, although I'll say 2 more things on this front. Number one, Trump did say last week that Republicans were getting blamed more than Democrats for this shutdown, which was a notable statement. And number 2, I think it's very likely that Republicans will get the blame for if people's premiums go through the roof. I think people understand Republicans control all of government, which is why you've seen polls, as Julie just mentioned, the polls are showing that Republicans are getting the blame for the shutdown. I think people will understand that if their premiums are up 100% or 50% or 200% even, that Republicans will get the blame. And this is going to put Republicans in a position where they're going to be talking about health care, a policy, a topic that has been particularly weak for them over the last 15 years for the foreseeable future. And I think all of that does not portend well for Republicans.
Well, let me play, Julie, part of what Bernie Sanders had to say last night about the stakes going forward.
Over 20 million Americans are going to see at least a doubling in their premiums in the Affordable Care Act. In my state of Vermont and throughout this country, for certain groups of people, it will be a tripling and a quadrupling. We are on a pathway to throw 15 million Americans off of Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. Studies are out there that when you throw 15 million people off of health care, some 50,000 of our fellow Americans will die unnecessarily every single year.
And here's the Democratic House leader live. Let's take a listen.
The top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee. The overwhelming majority of Senate Democrats, led by Leader Schumer, are opposing this bill in the Senate. And they'll articulate, there are a variety of different reasons that the bill is being opposed strongly by Democrats in the Senate, the overwhelming majority of them. And there'll be a variety of different reasons that we articulate in the House. Now, certainly we're going to continue to stand by our hardworking federal employees. By the way, Donald Trump and Republicans, this toxic administration, they fired more than 100,000 federal employees prior to the shutdown that they started beginning. So, of course, there's reason to be deeply skeptical of the administration and their motives as it relates to the hardworking federal civil servants and the federal workforce. And we will continue to be deeply skeptical of their intentions. They spent the whole year implementing the toxic parts, the most toxic parts of Project 2025. After lying to the American people last year, saying they didn't know anything about Project 2025. And part of that has been going after the federal workforce. So we'll see what the language looks like, but it doesn't change the core problem here, which is we need to decisively address the Republican health care crisis on behalf of working class Americans, everyday Americans, and middle class Americans. Thanks. Third row.
So Dr. Oz said that millions.
Who?
Dr. Oz. There are millions of phantom enrollees under the ACA. Is that being looked at as it possibly makes it so that people that are on the ACA are paying more, inflating the numbers?
That's like the most random way to start a question on a serious topic. Nobody who's serious in this country takes Dr. Oz seriously. No one. And I mean, it's shocking that the guy even was confirmed. But this is part of the reality of Republicans here in the House and over in the Senate. They're nothing more than a rubber stamp for Donald Trump's cruelty and extreme agenda.
Are the phantom enrollees being addressed, though?
I have no idea what Dr. Oz is talking about, and neither do the American people. Now, with respect to the Affordable Care Act, here's what I do know. That Republicans have tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act more than 70 different times in the last 15 years. They don't operate in good faith when it comes to the health care of the American people. And of course, as Democrats have repeatedly indicated, we're open to sitting down and having a bipartisan conversation about how to fix our broken health care system overall. But I'm not going to respond to any comments from randos like Dr. Oz, who is woefully unqualified to be in whatever position he holds in the administration. He's a joke. These people are jokes. But the issue of the health care of the American people is very serious. And that's what we'll continue to focus on. Back row.
Do you see in the Senate bill the extension of SNAP benefits rather than the possibility of a January cliff for them? Do you see that as a victory, or is that something that also raises questions?
Here's what I understand about the SNAP situation. Republicans this year, on July 3rd, subsequently signed into law by the current president, enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, ripping away health insurance from at least 14 million Americans, and at the same period of time, cut $186 billion from SNAP. Republicans did that this year. They literally ripped food from the mouths of hungry children, seniors, and veterans so they could reward their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks that they made permanent. That's what Republicans did. They've launched an all-out assault on SNAP. They've weaponized hunger and starvation here in America, taken SNAP benefits away from more than 1 million veterans rather than honoring them tomorrow, which is what should be taking place in the United States of America. Republicans have done that. And so these people can't be trusted on the cost of living issue. These Republican extremists, they can't be trusted on the health care issue, and they certainly cannot be trusted on the SNAP issue.
As you know, this has been the longest shutdown in American history. You've seen chaos at airports, delayed SNAP benefits, people losing their jobs. And yet, the deal that Democrats agreed to has been a deal that's...
We're going to continue to listen into the Q&A here. We'll let you know if Hakeem Jeffries makes news. But let's go back, Julie, to what we heard from Bernie Sanders, which is, you know, throw maybe 15 million people off health care, according to a study. 50,000 Americans may die as a result of being uninsured. There's probably 20 million who will see at least a doubling of their premiums. You know, it's going to be not just people on ACA, but also Medicaid. So is the option for Democrats either, at least some Democrats, either you know that the Republicans may take the blame for this, or you continue to let people not get paid and people who need help go hungry. I mean, it's such a Rubik's Cube of ridiculousness.
I mean, listen, I've run campaigns many times in my life, and you plan for contingencies. And what I don't understand is what these members or these senators planned for, right? They should have planned for this alternative because they would have known that Donald Trump does not care, as you point out. So what was the point of inflicting all of this pain? What was the point of doing any of this if they weren't going to go through with it? And look, the reality is Bernie Sanders is absolutely right. Their own constituents, and I don't mean the Democrats' own constituents, I mean Mike Johnson, who by percentage represents part of a state that has the second highest number of people on Obamacare, on the ACA, who need these subsidies desperately, right? Who has SNAP, you know, these are people who desperately need SNAP benefits. They're hurting their own constituents, and yet...
Should Chuck Schumer go?
And yet, yes, Chuck Schumer should go. I'm sorry to say Chuck Schumer should go. I voted for him many times. I am ideologically quite aligned with where he is as a senator, but he's no longer capable of running this caucus. He's no longer capable of leading the Democratic Party. I am a lifelong, I mean, I am an establishment Democrat, and I'm here to say that Bernie Sanders is much more in line with where I and many other Democrats are today than Chuck Schumer is. And, you know, if you would have asked me that 5 years ago, I would have laughed at you. So that just to underscore exactly how furious Democrats are today for putting the country through this without having it out.
So in the meantime, as we wait for members of the House to come back, Allie, we got some new reporting about Democratic Congresswoman-elect Adelita Grijalva. Will she finally get sworn in?
It sounds like yes. My colleague Michael Schnell says that sources on the Republican conference call said that the speaker said one of the first orders of business is going to be to swear in the Congresswoman-elect from Arizona. Better late than never, I guess, but she's been sworn in for more than a month. Of course, the House, she has been elected and waiting to be sworn in for more than a month. The House, of course, hasn't been in session for more than a month. And so now when they come back, it sounds like that's going to happen. What also happens as soon as Grijalva gets sworn in is that she becomes the 218th signature on the discharge petition that would compel action on the Epstein files. Of course, this is more of a messaging moment than anything else, but it puts the speaker in a very awkward position of having to figure out how he will strategize around that bill if it is compelled to get to the floor. Because remember what discharge petitions are. They are a way of forcing the hand of Republican leadership, in this instance, on something that they very much don't want to have to deal with a vote on, in large part because that vote would pass the House. And so we're watching the Grijalva swear-in, not just for the small d democracy of it all, Chris, but also for what it impacts in terms of legislative moves in the House of Representatives.
All right, thank you so much for that. Ali Vitale, Jake Sherman, Julie Roginski. In 90 seconds, the nationwide travel nightmare that is only worsening, even as Congress did, as you just heard, clear its first hurdle to reopen the government. What that uncertainty could mean for millions of travelers just weeks ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday.